Thank you everybody for tuning in. So my background is in anesthesiology, but I'm one of the pain fellows here at Stanford. As Dr. Stevens mentioned, I will be talking about the interplay between stress and pain. I chose this topic because I think it's very relevant for all of us, regardless of whether we're living with pain on a daily basis or not, because at some point we will be experiencing stress. In terms of our objectives, we'll be looking at the body's pain response. It'll be a brief overview. We'll be defining stress. We'll understand the basics of the body's acute stress response and how that differs when the stress becomes more chronic. And then we'll talk about understanding the relationship between stress and chronic pain. And we'll spend a majority of our time looking at stress management strategies in chronic pain management. But a lot of these strategies will be very much applicable for everybody. So the body has developed the pain response to protect us from injury. Pain can be caused by many different things. I think in the picture above, just looking at it makes me feel pain. But this person is accidentally touching the fire with their foot. And you want your body to tell you that there is pain so that you can remove your foot from the fire. Back in the 16th century, that pain response was considered to be very hardwired. So a painful stimulus, in this case, the fire to the foot, was just passively transmitted on the highway along the nerves to the brain, and then the brain responds to that message. And that's it. Now, the current thought is that pain is much more complex and it's a multi-dimensional experience. So the pain message can actually be altered all along its path to the brain, at the level of the brain, or also when the brain is responding to that message. And you can see in the picture that there are a few factors that are listed here that can alter this message. So this includes your prior experiences with pain, your attention that you're currently paying to the pain, or your expectation of whether this should be painful or not. It could be related to the mood you're currently in. Are you happy? Are you sad? It could be related to an underlying mood disorder like anxiety or depression. It can be related to genetics. We're all wired a little bit differently. And it can also be related to how sensitive are you to that pain? Is that pain message being sent a lot of times? Well, over time, you're going to be more attuned to that message. So it's really a lot more complex than the one-way highway. You can also think of it as a volume dial. You can turn the volume up or you can turn the volume down depending on the situation. So how does stress play into that? Well, let's take a look at the stress response. So we live on a continuum between the fight or flight, which is also called the sympathetic, and the rest and digest, which is called the parasympathetic response. Our body is all about being in balance. So you'll notice that these systems exist in a delicate balance to really optimize our long-term physical and psychological health. And as I said, genetics, past experiences, expectations, our current state can all affect this balance and tip the scale one way or the other. Now, fight or flight is the danger system. And we need that system to, for example, run away from a lion chasing us. A specific part in our brain called the amygdala responds to the fear that we feel when we see this lion, and it responds to danger as well. And so it starts up our sympathetic response. Think a lot of adrenaline. We become more alert. We can feel uneasy or worried. Our heart rate and our blood pressure go up. We start sweating. We breathe faster. And we are really motivated to get away from this lion. After about 15 minutes of this kind of stress, our cortisol levels also go up so that we have the energy to cope with the stress at hand. Now, that stressor does not need to be physical by any means. It's just the easiest to conceptualize. A stressor can be any physical or psychological threat to our safety, our status, our general well-being, and a possible stressor includes pain. It's also important to realize that what is perceived as stressful can be very different from one person to the next. So I may be very stressed about giving a talk to everyone tonight, but not everyone else might be stressed about giving a talk to people they've never met before. The response to the stress is still the same as when trying to escape the lion, regardless of what that stress is. So the goal of the fight or flight system is to help us survive or be successful in a task that we care about. And it is supposed to help us deal with the stress at hand and then return us back to the balanced state. Now, oftentimes I have also heard about people mentioning fight, flight, or fright, which essentially means that instead of fleeing or running away, you freeze or become paralyzed. I think if you think about stress as all these different possibilities, it makes sense that running away isn't always an option. But I think the underlying commonality between the two is that you're trying to avoid that stressor one way or another, whether that's by running away or by avoiding it completely and by freezing. So short-term stress can actually be really beneficial because it can suppress pain. And it increases the release of substances in our body that block the perception of pain. Those are our natural painkillers, for example, endorphins. Imagine the following situation. You are running away from the lion, and then you twist your ankle. Sitting down to focus on that twisted ankle would be really counterproductive to your survival. So the body will turn the volume down on feeling pain in that ankle. So that means you don't notice the pain right away. You keep on running away from that lion until you are safe. Only when you have dealt with the threat of the lion does the body then turn the volume back up on the ankle pain, so that then you can focus your energy on the hurting ankle and do something about it, because you also don't want to be walking on the recently injured ankle. Now, once we have escaped from the lion or any other stressor, or we have successfully completed that stressful task, we go back into the rest and digest mode. So this system really focuses on restoring our energy. The system is about healing, repair. Cortisol levels go back down. We still do need some cortisol level in this state to help maintain our blood sugar, provide energy to our brain and muscles, and to counteract inflammation in general in the body. So what happens when we're chronically stressed? Well, this fine-tuned system we just talked about is now in a state of imbalance. For example, the cortisol response can now become dysfunctional. If you think about repeated surges of cortisol to respond to repeated short-term stress, that can exhaust cortisol over time. It's like a roller coaster of cortisol if you think about it. Or low levels of constant stress can also exhaust cortisol over time. Our body is not meant to be in fight or flight the whole time. It's meant to be in that nice balanced state. So what does that mean? Well, your body is now in an overall state of inflammation, and that can turn the volume back up on pain sensations. How pain affects the cortisol system is a bit controversial, though. There have been studies showing it decreases, it increases, or it doesn't change cortisol at all. So take it with a grain of salt. But researchers have adopted two models linking stress and pain. The first model considers pain as a type of stress that strains the individual, like what we've already talked about. So for example, chronic back pain can lead to stress overload, and that stress overload can then increase your pain. It can increase risk of depression, cause weight gain because you're not moving so much, substance use if pain is inadequately managed. And that chronic pain essentially leads to that wear and tear of our normal system that wants to be in balance, and that would normally help us adapt. The second model focuses on wear and tear leading to chronic pain. So when you are faced with stress, This can trigger pain. So let's think about a migraine attack. Now, over time, stress can lead to increased vulnerability and change your threshold and contribute to pain becoming chronic. The bottom line is chronic pain can lead to chronic stress, and chronic stress can lead to chronic pain. They essentially amplify the negative effects of each other. And this is really a vicious cycle. And then fatigue and other cognitive symptoms can also be triggered or worsened because of stress. This is really an oversimplification of the system, and the system is quite complex, but it does help to understand the basics. Now, it's not realistic to live and work in a world free of any stress. I wish that were the case, but we do have the capacity to control what we perceive as stressful and then how we respond to it. So I want to start out by saying that focusing on managing pain rather than curing it is not giving up. So I'll say this again. Focusing on managing pain rather than curing it is not giving up. So on the contrary, it's choosing to live life to the fullest and find ways to thrive despite the pain. So how can we alter stress and turn the volume at least a little bit back down on that pain? There are 3 different components I want to talk about. These include lifestyle, psychological or focusing on the mind, and then social supports. The link at the top there will lead you to the Stanford guide and talk a lot about the strategies I will be talking to you about tonight. So don't worry if you miss something during this talk. You can always refer to this link later on. And the lecture will also be recorded for review later on. So managing stress means addressing many facets of our lives. So that includes physical activity, nutrition, and sleep. It can be really challenging to start being physically active when our bodies are in pain. In acute situations, like when you've just had a surgery, rest can be really beneficial. And listening to our bodies and the painful sensations can help us pace ourselves. And that can be helpful in the recovery process. In the case of chronic pain, however, prolonged rest can contribute to additional problems, deconditioning, increased stress, or other pain problems that aren't the initial pain site. Physical activity is important to help improve mobility, build strength, improve balance, and coordination. And regular physical activity can reduce the symptoms of chronic pain. Now, I'm specifically saying physical activity and not exercise because those are still different. And your doctor, physical therapist, fitness professionals, pain psychologists, they can all help build a program that is right for you. Just some examples that I've listed here on the slides include aquatic exercise or therapy, Tai Chi, Qigong, Pilates for functional activities training. This focuses on daily tasks like lifting, gripping, etc. Aquatic exercise can be helpful because being in water can decrease stress on painful weight-bearing joints such as knees or hips. You can think of Tai Chi as a meditation in motion, and it often focuses on controlled and often very slow movements. This can often be a nice way to start with physical activity. Qigong also uses movement, but it adds a layer of breathing and mindfulness because movement and breathing are actually quite connected, and oftentimes we dissociate those two quite a bit. But at the end of the day, it's important to find a way to move your body that you also enjoy. And the reason is you're more likely to stick to something that you like doing rather than, you feel forced to do. which is why I'm saying physical activity and not exercise. Now, diet is equally important. We want to ensure our body gets all the appropriate nutrients it needs. The CDC, the NIH, or the Arthritis Foundation have some recommendations on how to accomplish this, but it's important to build a nutrition plan that is appropriate for you. And this can be different from one person to the next. Dietitians can be excellent resources to help with determining a plan that's right for you. I do briefly want to talk about the anti-inflammatory diet that's often recommended for arthritis. And there's a significant overlap with the Mediterranean diet as well. So we'll start with the fish on the side there. There's certain types of fish that are rich in inflammation-fighting omega-3 fatty acids, and those can help reduce inflammatory proteins in your body. The recommendation from the Arthritis Foundation is about 3 to 4 ounces twice a week. And the best sources are things like salmon, tuna, sardines, anchovies. And some of those might be even easy to stick into something like a salad. I know I like my Caesar salad with some anchovies in it, but I might be the only one here. The next recommendation is fruits and vegetables, not surprisingly. They're packed with antioxidants. Those support our immune system and our immune function. So that's our body's natural defense system. And they also might help inflammation. The Arthritis Society recommends at least 1.5 to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of veggies per meal. And the best sources are pick anything from the color palette. Colorful foods, blueberries, blackberries, cherries, spinach, kale, broccoli, anything that has a color, pick that, and then pick something from a different color palette. The next one at the very top there, those are nuts. Nuts are full of inflammation-fighting monounsaturated fats, proteins, and fibers as well, which is a bonus if you're also trying to lose some weight because they are quite filling. The recommendation is about 1.5 ounces of nuts daily, which is about a handful. So not a heaping amount of nuts in your hand, but about a handful. Best sources include walnuts, pine nuts, pistachios, almonds. Those would all be great sources. Beans is another recommendation by the Arthritis Society because they have several antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compounds. They also have a lot of fiber, protein, and minerals like magnesium, iron, zinc. The Arthritis Foundation recommends at least a cup twice a week. And you can pick your variety. There are pinto beans, black beans, garbanzo beans. You can name it, it's in the list. The other thing that's not in my little graphic here, but that makes an appearance in both the anti-inflammatory and the Mediterranean diet is olive oil. It really contains those heart-healthy fats, some antioxidants, can lower inflammation. The Arthritis Foundation recommends 2 to 3 tablespoons per day for cooking or salad dressings. Now, the best sources are extra virgin olive oil because it's less refined and less processed and has more nutrients as a result. So for optimal quality and freshness, pick the oils that are packaged in the dark bottles. And oftentimes they'll have a seal or a certification on them, like the North American Olive Oil Seal or the COOC. And then the closer the harvest date to the purchase date, obviously the fresher it will be. The next thing that is important is to make sure you get lots of fiber. That can lower inflammatory proteins as well. And there are actually some foods that have a lot of fiber that get these levels down more than taking fiber supplements, for example. And those foods are carotenoids, and those are the foods that give carrots or peppers and some of the fruits their colors. Now, the recommendation, as well as that processed foods such as cookies, chips, and other snacks, which are all great and wonderful to eat, can be high in very unhealthy fats, as well as salt. And those are linked with inflammation and high blood pressure. And then canned goods, they made a recommendation around as well, that just to pay attention to the level of sodium or salt in them, because oftentimes there'll be added salt, and that can increase blood pressure as well. So either look for the low salt options or go with fresher frozen vegetables. I also looked into some supplements as well, because we do recommend them in the pain clinic. There are some studies that have looked into vitamin C and decreasing stress. Those have mostly been animal studies, but there are some patient ones. And the ones in patients have either shown positive results or no change, so no harm done. And so given that vitamin C really has a low side effect profile, a few studies have suggested that this is something to try out. The dose here would be 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C per day to help reduce the response to stress. It can also apparently be used as an adjunct in therapy for depression and anxiety as well, which I thought was an interesting note. Now, I think a lot of people experience sleep problems, and developing a good sleep hygiene is very important to ensure that we get the rest that we need. We can break down sleep hygiene into four aspects. Number one is setting a sleep schedule. So that means having a fixed wake up time, regardless of whether it's the weekday or the weekend. Keeping naps to short time periods and limited to the early afternoon to avoid throwing off your sleep at night. And it also means to recognize the importance of prioritizing sleep, like we would prioritize nutrition or our work or our social activities. And it's all about the small steps. No major change has ever been accomplished in a single day. Number two is you can establish a nightly routine and keep that consistent. The brain likes consistency. So whatever you put on repeat, the brain will start recognizing patterns. So that can mean dim the lights, unplug from electronics about 30 to 60 minutes before you go to bed. Try some relaxation exercises. If you can't fall asleep within 20 minutes of going into bed, get back out. And then do a low stimulating exercise like stretching, reading in low light before getting back into bed. The key here is not to overstimulate. So I wouldn't recommend turning on the TV because that's a lot of stimulation all at once. Third would be cultivating daily habits, things that we can do on an everyday basis. And so some examples include getting out into daylight, having some sunshine. That signals to our brain and our circadian rhythm of what is supposed to be day and what is supposed to be night. Move your body, reduce alcohol consumption, quitting smoking, and decreasing caffeine in the afternoon or evening. The main reason why these last three are important is because it can affect our sleep quality over time. Even if we do end up getting sleep, it might not be restful. And then number four would be optimizing your sleep environment. So have a mattress that's comfortable for you, have a comfortable temperature in your bedroom, block out the light, decrease some noise. Some people like calming scents like lavender. There are some helpful phone apps that can help with this journey of developing a sleep hygiene. And I've listed two here. One of them is CBTI. That stands for CBT Insomnia. That's a free app. It also does a little bit more than just a sleep hygiene. And then Headspace, which is a subscription-based program, and that's also more than just sleep hygiene. They have meditations, for the day. They have good night stories. They have little teaching videos. So some great resources there. Sometimes having sleep problems, though, is bigger than just having a good sleep hygiene or schedule. So sometimes it means you need to talk to your doctor. And that could either mean that you need to have a sleep study done to rule out any sleep disordered breathing, like obstructive sleep apnea. It could also be helpful for your doctor to reassess your medications. A lot of medications can interfere with sleep. One of the examples that I always like to bring up are opioid medications that can have an impact on your sleep cycle over time. So our pain psychology and pain physical therapy colleagues are the expert in this domain here, focusing on the mind. Because stress can dial up the volume on the pain, managing stress this way is meant to help turn the dial back down. Most of us are probably aware of cognitive behavioral therapy. And one strategy that I'll highlight is challenging negative thoughts. So ways to do this include asking yourself some of the following questions when a thought pops into your mind. Is the statement 100% true all the time? What would I tell my friend or a close family member if they experienced the same thought? Is this thought really helpful to me? And can I reframe this thought in a more helpful way? There are many other types of therapies outside of cognitive behavioral therapy, and I wanted to mention fear avoidance therapy here. Many people with pain will avoid certain physical activities because they're afraid that it will cause more pain or more injury. While this can be helpful with an acute injury, as I said before, in chronic pain, fear avoidance can lead to deconditioning, loss of muscle strength, loss of flexibility, and really overall worse pain. And fear avoidance therapy specifically focuses on this thought pattern and then how to alter it. There are many other ways to reduce stress. So while watching TV can be relaxing for some people, it's also very stimulating. I specifically want to talk about active relaxation strategies. So one relaxation strategy I love using myself is forest bathing, which is why I picked this background. It's a Japanese practice where you get out into nature and your goal is just to observe your surroundings and to focus on deep breathing. And even if you cannot get out into a real forest, you can do this exercise by watching 360-degree forest videos as well, which I didn't know existed until I prepared for this talk. As for breathing, I actually want us to try diaphragmatic breathing right now. It's a great strategy that can help with the stress. So place one hand on your upper chest and then place the other one on your belly. You can't see that where I'm sitting, but just below your rib cage. Now breathe in slowly through your nose, letting in the air deeply and then towards your belly. So you want to see your belly expand and then the hand on your chest should remain still. Now, when you exhale again through your pursed lips, the hand on your belly should move down and to its original position. So let's try this for 3 breaths. Other helpful breathing strategies include box breathing. I don't know if anyone has heard of that before, but it's you inhale for 4 seconds or 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, then exhale for 4 counts, and then hold your breath for 4 counts. I find this a lot more challenging to do than diaphragmatic breathing, which is why I wanted to really try out that diaphragmatic breathing with you tonight. Other strategies for stress reduction include biofeedback, hypnosis, guided imagery, or art and music. Biofeedback is a strategy where there are sensors that are attached to you, and then the sensors attached to a computer. And the computer then gives information about your stress response. And it teaches you how to alter your stress response by changing your breathing, actively relaxing your muscles, and then really taking that feedback you're getting from those sensors about things like heart rate. Hypnosis is about achieving a state of intense focus that can be done on your own or with the help of a professional. Guided imagery is a process where you use your imagination to take the mind to a relaxing place. So, for example, a beach or a forest. Because I've used the forest example before, we'll talk about the ocean. It's really helpful to incorporate all your senses for this exercise. The more vivid it is, the easier it is for the brain to pay attention to it. So how does the ocean smell? What does the sand feel like under your feet? What do you hear? Do you hear the seagulls flying overhead? That can be helpful if you have a few minutes to just do that. Engaging in art or music therapy is all about the creative process. It doesn't really matter what you create. It doesn't even matter if you make the music or if you listen to music. But research has shown that both art and music can release our body's natural painkillers, which are endorphins. So one of the other big negative impacts of chronic pain, I think that I've seen a lot, is social isolation. Have you ever avoided making plans with your friends or your family because you're afraid that you might have to cancel last minute? When we think about an acute injury, our support system is often quick to offer help. They'll drop in, they bring us meals, they just spend time with us. But what happens when we're in pain over a longer period of time? The support system can dwindle, and there are ways to keep social connections. Number one would be to communicate with the people close to you. People around us can only know what we are feeling, thinking, or going through when we clearly tell them. Number two could be support groups. That could be your neighbors, could be religious organizations, groups based on common interests, groups based on your specific pain condition, even your healthcare team. When picking a support group, the one thing I would highly recommend is finding a group that focuses on strengths and successes. Support groups, when focused on negativity, can actually turn the volume up on your pain as well. I think another aspect here I want to highlight is our online environment and the media that we do consume. So while we can certainly use social media to make connections online or connect with people through the news or even the media we consume, the same rule applies here that I mentioned for our support groups. When you pick your environment, pick one that focuses on positivity, strengths, and successes. So let's try an exercise here. In the middle of the circle is you. Each circle around you is kind of like the circles of a tree, and it represents people from closest to you to furthest away. I specifically didn't label each layer because this can look very different for every person here, but really think about it. Who would be in the circle next to you? Who would be in the layers further out? And when you start doing this exercise, you might realize how many people there are in your network, or how many people you haven't connected to in a while, or people that are close to you that you haven't talked to about your pain that actually would be very happy to help you if you shared how you felt. So I'll leave that exercise with you. And my take-home points for today are several. Number one, focusing on managing pain rather than curing it is not giving up. Chronic pain can lead to chronic stress, and chronic stress can lead to chronic pain. So what can we do to decrease stress? We can find a way to move our body that we enjoy. This doesn't have to be physical exercise. It doesn't have to be hitting the gym or lifting weights right away. It could be Tai Chi, Qigong, aquatic therapy. Get creative. Anything to get your body moving. Nutrition. What we put into our bodies is important. Try an anti-inflammatory diet. See how you feel with it. It's really about making sure that you get all the nutrients that you need. Sleep. See if you can alter your sleep hygiene and incorporate some of the things we talked about. See if you can talk to your doctor about reassessing your medications. Maybe you need a sleep study. Sleep is important, and it does help us get the rest that we need to get through our days. Stress reduction therapies. I've given you many different strategies. We've tried one, diaphragmatic breathing. You can do that anywhere. You do not have to be in a specific place or with a specific person. You just need both of your hands and your breath. And last but not least, social support. Really think about who is in your circles of support. And then reaching out to them, communicating with them. Additional classes and groups resources that I haven't talked about today, but that are also offered at the pain clinic include virtual pain psychology classes, like CBT for chronic pain, pain and purpose, all about sleep and pain, CBT and movement, back in action. The education support sections would be like attending a lecture like tonight. We do have them every month, so keep a lookout for other topics that are to come in the future. And then there are some migraine-specific support groups that are going on as well that we have here that I'll leave on for here. I do have a Q&A section.